Hi, my name is Trina. Welcome back to my channel. Today is the first day of November, so it's time to do a monthly reset. I kind of forgot to do this last month after saying I wanted to start doing this every month, so we're once again doing a reset where not only am I going to wrap up everything I read last month, October, but we're also going to be talking about some of the books that I'm looking forward to reading in November, which I feel like I especially need this month wrap up because October was not a big reading month for me. I have a little bit at the beginning and I have a little bit at the end, but overall I was just kind of working on the same 4 books throughout the entire month of October, one of which I didn't even manage to finish because I had a lot going on in my life. I was sick and I've been hanging out with family and I've been traveling, and it's just been a very stressful, busy month where reading hasn't felt like something that releases that stress. It's more felt like something that's added to that stress. So I've just kind of taken a step back from reading. So you'll see how that affects some of the books I talk about that I've read this month. 3 of them are much shorter books like manga and graphic novels, and 2 of them are rereads of romance novels. So it's kind of an interesting mixed bag, but that's another reason why I desperately need a reset to bring the good reading vibes back in November, because my physical TBR has gotten a bit out of hand in the past few months, and I want to take a serious crack at it next month. But taking it one step at a time, first off, for my October wrap-up, I do have 9 books to talk about. Like I said, 3 of them were graphic novels, mangas that took me like a half an hour to 40 minutes to read each, and 2 of them were rereads in a series, so we'll get to that all in its due time, and it should go pretty quickly. To start off, I began October doing my first fall reading vlog and finishing up that last book for that vlog, which was Slewfoot, A Tale of Bewitchery by Brom. Because I already talked about it a bit in that vlog, I'll keep it short and sweet. But Slewfoot is kind of a revenge story about a young woman who's been married off and sent to one of the new colonies in American colonial period, one of the Pilgrims, in like a Puritan compound in kind of early America. She likes her husband, but she's struggling with the fact that no one else in the town really likes her or trusts her because her mother was a witch and she still does a little bit of the witch practices that her mom did. Early on in the book, something happens to her husband and she's forced to deal with her husband's brother who has it out for her. And over the course of the book, as she's trying to make it in this early America society, dealing with the older brother of her husband, she slowly starts getting help from a creature that has emerged from the woods, whose perspective we also get, who she calls Samson. And we think he may or may not be the devil himself. And there's a lot of witch cavorting with the devil imagery and symbolism, but not as much as maybe I expected. I didn't love Slewfoot. I maybe just had too high of expectations. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. So it was an enjoyable read. I think it was especially helped by the fact that I read most of it when I was in Washington, DC on the East Coast. And the vibes of Washington, DC and the East Coast in the fall matched Slewfoot really well. So I did have a good time. I didn't regret reading it, but it also I had my expectations way too high. I was expecting a more old-fashioned style of writing, very descriptive and narrative, because I was kind of comparing it to some other books I've read from early America time period. And that was I just didn't really get that from it. It felt very contemporary and modern in its themes and in its execution. Also, I didn't really get particularly attached to any of the characters. They all kind of felt like caricatures of characters that were acting in this time period to represent certain themes. I wasn't a massive fan. It didn't really work for me. I'll talk about it in that vlog more, but I'm glad I read it, and it started off a good fall vibe, so I can't complain about that. But that was Slewfoot by Brom. I would recommend it to some people, but it's not going to be a new favorite for me. And then after finishing Slewfoot, I had my flight back to Sweden from the US, and on that flight, I love a romance book on a flight. And I had been disappointed by so many romance books recently that I decided to reread 2 of my favorite romance books. Heated Rivalry by Reid and its follow-up, The Long Game. But starting off with Heated Rivalry, this is technically a standalone romance in a series of other standalone romances in the same world. But I've read Heated Rivalry last year, and I was so happy I read this when I did, because not 4 or 5 days after I did my reread of these books, the trailer for the TV show adaptation came out, and it looks so good. The casting feels so on point, and because I just freshly read the books, it felt even more like perfect. Like it felt like everything I imagined while reading the book suddenly just came to life 4 days later in a trailer. And I'm so excited. You have to watch this show. If you're in Canada and you can get a Crave subscription, you have to watch this show for me, because I'm gonna be forced to wait until it comes out on US streaming services. But either way, I'm so excited for this TV show. And I love this book even more on the reread. For Heated Rivalry, I gave it 4.5 stars. Like I said, it is a romance book. It is a hockey smut romance, especially Heated Rivalry compared to some of the other books in the series, is just a lot of sex scenes. But it makes sense because it's a story about two hockey rivals from the time they turn like 18, 19 to when they turn 30. They play on rival teams, but the whole time since they were very young, they've been super into each other and go from hooking up over the years as they meet up to falling in love with each other. I think that's honestly why I like this book so much more than other hockey romances I've tried to read, because oftentimes with sports romances I've noticed, it's like one person plays the sport and then the other person does something else. And I'm like, well, no, I like it when both of the love interests are doing the sport and they're like competitive and they both care about this sport. Because how else are you gonna get me to care about the sport in the game when I'm reading this book if both of the characters aren't involved? You know what I mean? So that's one of the highlights of this book, why I loved it so much. I think the first time I read it, I was like solid 4 stars. But now rereading it, knowing even more about the characters and being like obsessed with the TV show and everything, made it so much better. I love Shane and Ilya so much, the main characters. They have so much chemistry on page, but also I'm just like now super emotionally attached to the struggles they go through, both in this book, but also in the follow-up, The Long Game. I did read The Long Game right after reading Heated Rivalry. I think I just generally prefer books about characters getting together for the first time over books of like their continued relationship after Heated Rivalry ends and how they end up coming out and how they end up dealing with their personal struggles. But at the same time, I love The Long Game and it adds a lot of context to their personal struggles. We get a lot more information about like Ilya's struggle with depression and how he's dealt with like the fact that he lost his mom when he was very young. We get more of Shane's like severe struggles with anxiety and how that affects the way he eats and like how his very disordered eating as a result of being a professional athlete. We get so many details in The Long Game that create great context when I reread Heated Rivalry to love those characters even more. But I like the getting together in Heated Rivalry more, so The Long Game gets 4 stars for me. Really enjoy it. I definitely recommend these if you like romance, like kind of smutty Kindle Unlimited romance with great chemistry and like well-written characters. These are like the perfect plane books for me, and this was no exception. Reading this in the plane was like perfect. And I still love both these books, and I'm so excited to see what the TV show does with them because the casting literally feels like it just was like dropped straight out of the book. Like I'm very, very excited, clearly. I am very picky about my romances, but once I get attached to a couple or characters, then like I can overlook so many issues, and these books are not perfect. There are a lot of issues in them. For example, Shane is half Japanese in the books, and we just like do not get enough discussion of that at all, how that affects him, or like really any sort of mention other than saying that he's half Japanese. So I hope those things get more detail in the TV show as well. We'll have to see. Then after that starts my dry spell in the middle of the month, where basically from like October 6th to October 27th, I like could not finish a book, but I could finish 2 mangas. So that's what I'm gonna talk about. I checked out from the library and then purchased afterwards. The guy she was interested in wasn't a guy at all, by Sumiko Arai. Translation by Carina Dallmeier. Basically the plot of the book is that Aya and Mitsuki share a desk at school and are schoolmates, but they are very, very different. Mitsuki is extremely shy and reserved and no one really is friends with her, versus Aya is very popular and outgoing. But secretly, Aya really loves alternative rock music that like her friends would think isn't cool of her to love. So one day she walks into a CD store to see like if they have any albums that she might like, and she gets a massive crush at the person working at the CD store who she thinks is a guy, but is actually Mitsuki, her schoolmate, who she does not recognize because Mitsuki looks so different outside of school. But eventually she does find out, and the two of them kind of have to deal with the fact that they both have crushes on each other. It is so cute, and I loved this. I really, really loved it. The art in some of the parts of this is just gorgeous. And the way that Sumiko Arai, through like the visual medium that is manga, like very few words, lots of pictures, pretty short, still manages to convey so much of the internal struggle that these characters have with their identity and like liking each other and the issues they have at school and how their public perception of who they are is different than who they are inside, and also how the metaphor of music is done incredibly well. Like Aya loving music secretly and not telling her friends about it is meant to be like a representation of her sexuality. I think that's how I read it, and I just felt like it was so well done, and I love this. So I ended up giving this 5 stars. I still think this is a 5-star manga. I'm totally obsessed with it. I've already reread it once since reading it, just like flipping through the pages, and I think it's so gorgeous. So right afterwards, I was like, I have to pick up volume 2. So I picked up volume 2 as well. This continues the story basically at the end of volume 1, but covers a little bit more time period. We don't really get a ton of development of Aya and Mitsuki's relationship in this one. I still really liked it. The art style has not changed. There's some gorgeous panels in here that I like tabbed. Oh yeah, there's just some like gorgeous art panels in here that I was just obsessed with. It was so stunning. But I do feel like the story in volume 2 was a little bit more scattered. It didn't really seem to have like a clear pace like volume 1 did. I feel like this often happens with books when the author isn't sure they're writing a sequel. Then book 1 is like a completed unit, and volume 2, book 2 sometimes feel like, okay, now we have to lead into where the rest of these issues, these books are gonna go. So I did feel like that way a little bit with volume 2. The metaphors and the representation didn't necessarily hit the same way it did in volume 1, but I love my green Yuri. It's so cute. And I definitely recommend this if you're looking to get into a manga and you like sweet romances, then I think this is really cute and the art style is gorgeous. So I'm really excited to read volume 3. I think the English translation comes out this month or next month, like pretty soon. So I'm absolutely gonna be picking up volume 3 as soon as that comes out, and I'm really excited. That is The Guy She Was Interested In Wasn't a Guy at All, volumes 1 and 2. And then, like I said, in these last like week of October, I was finally over my sickness. I finally realized I have to probably film another fall reading vlog and do that, so that's coming to you soon. So I want to talk a little bit about the books that I managed to finish in the last 4 days of the month. The first one was a new release actually that I was happy to get my library hold of, and that's kind of what encouraged me to finally start reading again, was like, oh, this library hold's gonna expire. It's a super popular book. I'm not gonna get it for another 6 months. I have to read it now. And that is Mate by Ali Hazelwood. Ali Hazelwood, this is my 3rd book from her, and this is the sequel to Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I think I've mentioned this a couple of times on this channel. I really liked Bride. I read it last year. I thought it was really cute. I think as soon as I finished it, I gave it 5 stars at first, and then I was like, no, it's more like a 4-star, 4.5 star. I really loved it and loved the characters in Bride because of the character dynamic, and that was kind of my problem with Mate, which we'll get into. But essentially, the story for this world is that in Bride, we're introduced to this alternate universe reality of the United States where land and area and basically nationality is divided up between vampires, humans, and werewolves, who all have their own like areas that they live in, and they're fairly isolated from one another. They don't interact. They have their own areas, and they all like kind of hate each other and don't trust each other because of historical atrocities and things like that. So in book 1, in an attempt to broker peace between the vampires and the werewolves, we meet our main character Misery, who is married off to a werewolf alpha named Lo, and the two of them fall in love over the course of the process. And in book 1, Misery only agrees to the marriage in order to figure out what happened to her best friend, Serena. Book 2, Mate follows Serena. So we basically pick up from book 1. Serena is dealing with what happened to her in that book and what she learned about herself. In Bride, she discovered she was a half werewolf, and so she's kind of dealing with that after not knowing that about herself. She thought she was human for the entire rest of her life. And in book 2, she finds out that she's actually the mate to another werewolf alpha. They're just all over the place in this series, called, what's his name? Lowen. The plot really doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's not super important in Mate, honestly. The whole book is just about the fact that Lowen refuses to act on his attraction to Serena, despite her being his mate, and the two of them are like holding back from one another. Serena because she thinks that she's going to die from a chronic illness, and Lowen for other reasons that are revealed fairly early on. If you can't tell from my tone, Mate did not hit for me, unfortunately, which was really sad because I saw so many people who love Bride also loving Mate, and it did not hit the same. Like, you cannot compare Lowen and Lo. God, they have similar names, I just realized. But anyways, you just can't compare them to me. I really didn't like the main romantic interest in Mate. He was so bossy and aggressive and was kind of like meant to be this like kind of trope that's really popular these days of this like super gruff, rude, abrasive, domineering personality who's actually like loves her and like will do anything for her. You can like that. So many people love that. I know people like that trope. It's just not for me. In the beginning of the book, Serena literally talks about how every guy she's ever dated before was like a nice guy that she who's too sweet and like would like let her walk all over them or whatever. That's my type in people. Overall, I like sweet people. I like sweet main characters, sweet love interests. I don't really love when the whole like macho man energy thing is leaned into too much. Lo did that a little bit in book 1 in Bride, but I felt like it was well balanced because Misery was such like a sarcastic, dominant personality as well. So the two of them kind of like butted heads really well in book 1. In this book, Serena is just going through it. She has too much to deal with, also deal with this like aggressive man walking around telling her what to do, but she's really into it. And you know what? Good for her. I was not. Like I said, I did not enjoy it. I gave it 2.5 stars. It was readable because I needed a book on my Kindle to read while I was at the gym and doing stuff on my Kindle, but it was not as good as Bride. And I did go back and I reread now the first like 40% of Bride. That still hits. That's still really good. I did enjoy getting more information about the world, and I still enjoy Serena and Misery's friendship a lot. Did not care about Serena's love interest. And also just the way that the whole plot was resolved is crazy because we have this like really emotional, deep plot in the first half of the book that was really working for me. And all of a sudden the way that gets resolved is it leads into the smut in the second half. And that's its only purpose. And it was just such a letdown, it was such a disappointment from like the emotional depth that we get in the first half of Mate. Actually, all of that was only there, not to develop these characters or have them grow or for them to learn anything from it. It was just there to lead us into this smut. Usually don't mind smut, didn't like the characters enough to enjoy it here, let's just say. But okay, that was Mate by Ali Hazelwood. Probably my biggest disappointment of this month. I still haven't given up on Ali Hazelwood because I do like her writing. It's so addictive. She writes great banter between characters. It's really fast-paced and interesting. Me and Ali Hazelwood don't have the same taste in love interests overall, just in like personality types. And I'll leave it at that. And then also for that vlog, I read Fangs by Sarah Andersen. I was really excited to pick this up for the Halloween season, so I'm so glad I actually managed to read it before Halloween. It took me like 20 minutes because this is a really short graphic novel kind of comic style story that follows a vampire and a werewolf who start dating and fall in love basically from the night they meet, and it follows them until they move in together in like a series of short comic vignettes. Each page is like a little short comic story with a punchline at the end that tells us a little bit more about their lives together, but while also being like silly, funny jokes about vampires and werewolves, you know? I really liked this. I thought it was really cute. This was everything that I wanted from Mate. This is everything I liked about Bride too, is like the funny jokes about vampires and werewolves between each other and the banter. It was quite short though, like it didn't take me that long to read, so I'm gonna give it a very loving 4 stars just because I really enjoyed it and thought it was really cute, but it was just pretty short and I didn't get super emotionally attached to the characters. But I will absolutely be rereading this like every Halloween. I thought it was really cute, and I had a good time reading Fangs by Sarah Andersen. And then literally yesterday on Halloween night, I decided to lock in and finish 2 more books. The first book I managed to finish was my audiobook that I was working on basically throughout the entire month of October. I was reading Cobalt Red, How the Blood of the Congo Powers Our Lives by Siddharth. This is a nonfiction about the current day conditions for cobalt miners in the Congo and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, but also covers the colonial history of Central Africa and the Congo that led to the current exploitation of the Congo and like the long and horrible history that the people there have had to put up with in pursuit of the great mineral riches that exist in this part of the world. And I can tell you right off the bat that I think this is probably one of the most important books of the decade. So I did give it 5 stars, as it deserves. I don't think, like, the writing may not be Shakespeare. I was kind of afterwards, I was like, the pacing or the way the book is laid out isn't like the clearest possible. But at the same time, I can have the clearest, most best written book in the world, or I can have a journalist, Siddharth Arai, who's willing to go into some incredibly dangerous situations in the Congo and interact with actual Congolese people about the conditions of their lives. And he actually investigates the claims of so many of the like tech oligarchs in like highly developed tech nations who claim that their practices are ethical and they don't use child labor, and investigating those claims and proving them to be entirely false, and that the cobalt that we use in all rechargeable batteries, the cobalt for our smartphones, our electric cars, our laptops, everything, is mined largely because of young children in the Congo who are exploited for their labor. I just think this book is so incredibly important because so often you hear people talk about like, be aware of what's going on in the Congo, like represent the Congolese people. It's really hard to do that if you don't actually hear what the Congolese people need and what they are suffering through and what ails them most and what is most important to them. And I think Siddharth Arai does an incredible job with following, for the majority of the book, just interviews. And maybe that's why the pacing of the book is a little bit odd, because he's going from place to place and he interviews people in all of those places. And a lot of their narratives are the same and are equally devastating, but are all equally important. If you want to be more informed, like on a really critical part of exploitation in the global economy today, I would really, really highly recommend Cobalt Red. I think it's so, so important. And then after Cobalt Red, we're on to my last book that I finished in October. I read Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. This is a gothic classic, perfect for the fall season, that I was buddy reading with Xenia and Xenia in the Books. And I didn't really put it in a vlog just because I didn't know how long it would take me to read it. Great choice on my part because I got sick in the middle of reading this and took forever to finish it. But last night I decided, I was like, I need to finish this. And I think I read the last 200 pages of this book just yesterday because it gets really juicy in the second half, let me tell you. Rebecca is a book about a unnamed female main character who at the beginning of the book meets a man, Maxime, who is the owner of a homestead called Manderley in England. She meets him in Monte Carlo. And the two of them, kind of on a whim, end up getting married. When he takes her back to Manderley, though, she learns that there's this whole history with his previous wife, Rebecca, who died a year before their marriage. No one's really giving the main character any information. She's kind of just wandering around this giant mansion, and her only friend is the dog, as everyone is kind of not telling her about Rebecca. And there's just a lot of like secrecy and mystery about it. So that's number one thing, is I really, really loved it. I think Rebecca's a 5-star read. It's a little hard to judge because, like I said, it took me a really long time and I was in a massive reading slump. But I do think this is a 5-star classic. It was just so stunningly written. I think the prose alone accounts for any 5-star rating. It's just the descriptions of Manderley, the descriptions of her like wandering through the woods, of the water, of these like empty halls in this home, set the atmosphere, make this book what it is. And it's just like stunning to read on the page. I switched a little bit to the audiobook once in a while, but in the end I was like, it doesn't hit the same when I can't like read these words in the page and really love them. I'm so glad that I finally read Rebecca. The ending devastated me, which was probably intentional. I should have expected from a gothic novel like a kind of unsatisfying ending, but I feel like it made sense. But like the last page of this book is just like, oh my goodness. Yeah, it's gorgeous, and I could 100% see why this classic has lasted in the zeitgeist of the world for so long, because it's so rich with contextual metaphors and meaning and stuff that I feel like I could reread and get so much more out of it. And like I want to write an essay about this dynamic between the female main character and Rebecca. I loved it. It's so, so rich, so interesting, and I'm so glad I read it. I know that Xenia is vlogging her read of Rebecca that we did for the buddy read. So whenever she posts it, I'll link it in the description below. I don't know if it'll be out by the time this video will be out, but when it is, I'll put it in the description below. And thank you to Xenia for reading with me, even though it was a reread for you. And thank you to the world that gave me this recommendation. It was so good. Beautiful. Perfect way to end October. But with that, it is now November, and I need to figure out what I'm reading. I'm currently in the middle of Hellbent, which isn't here. I don't know where it is, but I am currently reading Hellbent for a fall reading vlog. But when that's done, I do have some other books I want to get to. Here, let's reorganize this. So here's all my October books. Starting off, I have been reading Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer since September. This is an incredible book, so stunning. I'm like annotating it really detailed, so I'm reading it really slowly and annotating and tabbing and taking notes. But I've kind of gone to a halt with Braiding Sweetgrass, unfortunately, because when I started it, it was September, it was still warm out, I was out in nature a lot, and that's how I feel like this book should be read. It's like, for me, I feel like it should be read outside, or like you're about to go outside and like you're like in nature and you're feeling that connection. And every time I've tried to read it like this month, when I've been like in Copenhagen, in like a city setting, it like hasn't been hitting as well. Like, I really miss reading it in like a naturey atmosphere. So hopefully in November I will find a couple of good weather days to go sit in the park and continue working on Braiding Sweetgrass, but I'm not going to rush myself. Each chapter kind of reads like an individual essay, so I don't feel like I'm losing my pacing or anything like that by taking a little break to read it in the perfect conditions. I am loving this and I'll keep working on it, but it will probably take a back burner, and I'll also probably do other nonfictions on audiobook and stuff like that in the meantime. I also have another graphic novel. Since I've been on such a kick of graphic novels, I kind of want to also pick up another one. I'm really excited to read Genderqueer by Maia Kobabe. This is a autobiography by a non-binary asexual author about coming to terms with their identity that I've been meaning to read for ages. And it reminds me a lot of Fun Home by Alison Bechdel, just in terms of like the art style. So I'm hoping to feel similarly affected by Genderqueer. What else do I have? Oh, speaking of graphic novels, I need to read the Raven Boys graphic novel, which I've been saying for ages. I started picking it up when I bought it in September because I was really excited for it. It didn't quite hit the same as the book in the first few chapters. It made me almost want to reread the book instead, because I think Maggie Stiefvader's beautiful writing is part of what makes the Raven Boys as good as it is. And especially this first book, which wasn't even my favorite in the series. Like, my favorite is probably The Dream Thieves, but at the same time, it won't take me that long to get through this. I really do love the characters, and I like looking at visual depictions of them. That's my explanation for why it's taking me longer to finally get to it. But I feel like I can add that to my list with some certainty, because it's a graphic novel, it won't take me that long. I just need to like sit down and actually do it. And the cover reveal for The Dream Thieves, the next graphic novel, has come out. It is gorgeous. Ronan looks so good. The magician card on it has so much meaning in this world. I'm very excited for that one. So I want to make sure I get through this in a timely fashion, along with my other graphic novel. And then my last two books that I want to put on the agenda for November that I feel like are doable. The first one is Stag Dance by Tori Peters. This is a collection of short stories, maybe with one novella, but mainly I'm very excited to read the titular story, Stag Dance. And again, I feel like a collection of like unrelated stories will be a good way to help me get back into reading, because I can read one or two of them and then put it down without feeling like guilty. I feel like this one's also very doable for November. And then this one is maybe a little bit less doable, but I will find a way to do it. I want to read The Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. I've tried to pick it up a few times. I'm so scared to start this next arc in the Realm of the Elderlings. This is book 4, but it starts its own series within the overall series. So we're introduced to new characters, we're getting invested in a new part of the 6 duchies of this world. And I know people say it's still amazing and there's still so much to love. And I know I will, but it's still like a massive commitment to sink into another trilogy of 800, 900 page books. So it's just been a little bit intimidating, especially with I've been so busy, and I would like to be sitting and relaxing and chilling out and have plenty of time on my hands when I finally pick this up. So hoping to make time later in November. I'll have a little bit more rest time, and then I'm gonna make The Ship of Magic a priority to read before the end of the year. I also am thinking about picking up Sappho in between. It's just poems and fragments from the ancient Greek poet Sappho. I feel like this is relatively short and I can read like a couple of poems or a couple of fragments and put it down and come back to it with no guilt, kind of similar to a short story collection or a graphic novel. So this might also be another good get back into reading type of book. But yes, with that, that is my November TBR along with my October wrap up, making this video pretty hefty with double the conversations, but I still hope you enjoy and you got some recs. If you've read any of the books that I've mentioned that are on my November TBR, please let me know in the comments whether or not you liked them or didn't like them. I'm really curious. I want to know ahead of time. If you've read any of the books I read in October and agreed or disagreed with my ratings, also please feel free to let me know. I love a conversation. But with that, I'm really, really happy to say goodbye to October. It wasn't as good of a reading month as I'd hoped, but I had a lot of other great stuff going on in my life in October, so that's okay. It's not always about the reading, and I'm hoping to make November a better reading month. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you had a great reading month in October, and I'm also excited to hear what you have coming up in November. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, whatever you want to do. I will see you in my next video pretty soon. Bye!